Live from the TV30 studio, here is Jim Schneider.
Good evening and welcome to inFocus. We've got a program that's going to be packed full of information. I would encourage you to have handy a sheet of paper, a pen or pencil to write information down. We'll be providing you some bill numbers. We'll be providing you some information pertaining to the upcoming spring primary election. We are just a week away from the election coming up. In addition to that, though we are just 1 month into this legislative session, did you know that there have been 100 pieces of legislation already introduced into our state legislature? We're going to be taking a look at just a few of those this evening as well. And so we thank you for joining us with us tonight. We have Julaine Appling. She is President of Wisconsin Family Council. It is their mission to advance Judeo-Christian principles and values in the state by strengthening, preserving, and promoting marriage, family, life, and liberty. Julaine, good to have you back.
Good to be here. Lots to talk about, as usual.
There is much to talk about, and I mean, a month that goes by, and there's a lot legislatively that happens. We'll be breaking that down. But first of all, it's been a day of heavy-heartedness in the city of Milwaukee, as Milwaukee police officer Peter Jerving had been killed in the line of duty last week Tuesday while serving and to protect our community. It's been a day of heavy hearts across this community. The funeral service held just hours ago at Elmbrook Church and being laid to rest at the Wisconsin Memorial Park there just off Capitol Drive. But shot and killed in the line of duty. And Julaine, we're seeing this aspect of lawlessness all throughout society taking place. Here's one who was there to protect the citizens, and instead it was his life that was taken, and we certainly commend his service to the community, but what a tragedy to take place.
Well, it is. And, you know, law enforcement, as you said, is intended to help us and to be there in our crises and to assist us. And, you know, when you talk about lawlessness, I admire anyone today who will go into law enforcement, because we are living in a time, Jim, where it appears that every man is doing that which is right in his own eyes. Mm-hmm. And I see it everywhere I go. I see it in the traffic. I see it in the way we handle life in general. It's a very me-centric approach. I want to do what I want to do in the way I want to do it. I don't care about rules and laws. And, you know, to have an ordered society, you need laws. And so, therefore, we need law enforcement. Because the natural bent of mankind is not to do the right thing, mm-hmm. but to do the wrong thing, because the depravity of man, right?
Right.
So bless this family's hearts, and as they sorrow the loss of this loved one, mm-hmm. as the police department deals with yet another casualty in the line of duty. Yeah. And we pray that good people continue to step up and serve in law enforcement. I so admire them, Jim. I really do. Mm-hmm. I think it's a tough situation for young people in particular to decide, oh yeah, I want to be in law enforcement today. What is there about how we deal with law enforcement today that makes them want to do that?
Right. So. Indeed, we do need people to step up of good moral character in that regard. Well, friends, you're watching inFocus, and we're going to begin with an address, the State of the Union speech that President Biden gave just last week, Tuesday, before a joint session of Congress. And we're going to air just one little clip in which he was dealing with the issue of abortion, that's the taking the life of the preborn, as well as what he had to say on the advancement of the LGBT agenda. So we're going to play one clip, and Julaine will come back even with some comments on it.
Here in the People's House, it's our duty to protect all the people's rights and freedoms. Congress must restore the right and the Congress must restore the right that was taken away in Roe v. Wade and protect Roe v. Wade. Give every woman a constitutional right. The Vice President and I are doing everything to protect access to reproductive health care and safeguard patient safety. But already more than a dozen states are enforcing extreme abortion bans. Make no mistake about it. If Congress passes a national ban, I will veto it. But let's also pass the Bipartisan Equality Act to ensure LGBTQ Americans, especially transgender young people, can live with safety and dignity. Our strength Our strength is not just the example of our power, but the power of our example. Let's remember the world's watching.
President Biden, last week, Tuesday, in the State of the Union address, Julaine, let's deal with the abortion issue first, because he started out by saying that we are, dealing with all people's rights, but he forgot that one that's in the womb.
That's exactly right. And I think that's one argument we need to get better at. That at the moment of conception, a distinctly separate human being is brought into existence, right?
Yes.
And should have the rights that we have to life in particular. All that newly conceived life needs is time and place to grow and develop. So the president got this wrong on so many levels. You would listen to him, and he talks about the right to reproductive freedom. There's no right. No one lost a right when Roe versus Wade was overturned by the Dobbs decision last June. What we did was restore the rule of law, because we know that in 1973, the then U.S. Supreme Court found a, quote, right to abortion in our U.S. Constitution out of whole cloth. Penumbras and emanations, and I mean, it's hocus pocus stuff. They made it up. It was judicial activism. And here's our president coming out and talking about restore the right. No right. He also talks about reproductive health care. Abortion isn't health care. What health care procedure do you know is designed to kill people? It's not health care. Abortion has one objective: kill the unborn baby. That is its objective. And so the president was wrong on this all the way across. He was pandering to his audience. Let's face it, there are a lot of people, organizations, who are prepared to put a lot of money behind his next presidential run, should he decide to do that, or whoever is going to run on the Democratic ticket upholding abortion. And they want to make sure that they're saying the right things.
He also talked about the dozen or so states with an extreme abortion ban. Those were his words, extreme abortion ban. What is extreme about saving life versus dismemberment?
It's not conservative people who are pro-life who are extreme. The extreme people are those who say, well, you can kill a baby up to the time the head crowns, right? Or even if you're in California, maybe even up to 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
That's extreme. The president he's got this completely upside down. And we need to regain the high ground on this, and telling that, saying I'll veto if there is a federal law put in place banning abortion, I'll veto it. Well, that's a surprise, right? Nobody would expect him to sign it. And by the way, I would love to see Congress pass something like that, but I don't look for it. Maybe the House will pull that together, but there's no way in the Senate right now, the way it's currently configured.
The other thing he pushed for was the passage of the so-called Equality Act.
It's not equality. Actually what it is a direct attack on our religious freedom. That's exactly what it is. This is pandering to a special group, to give a small group, a minority group, to give them special rights and privileges in order to normalize their choices, to make it acceptable in our society, and so that people look at that and don't have any pause for it, right? Don't blanch at all. That's what this is about. In the crosshairs is religious freedom.
Yeah.
It's the ability for faith-based adoption agencies to say, no, we won't place children with couples who are same-sex, and on and on and on we go.
We understand also this coming June, it's believed, that the United Nations is going to be giving their recommendations, because we have this collision taking place between the advancements of perversion and religious rights. And they're saying that the perversion should take precedence over religious rights, advancing the LGBT agenda through a UN declaration that is being worked on right now as well. And we're going to continue to see that. We'll certainly be addressing that on a future program. But Julaine, as we take a look at the importance of where we are right now in Wisconsin, we have a very, very critical election. It's a primary, February 21, next week, Tuesday.
Well, we do. And I know for most people, a lot of election fatigue. Wisconsin, if we do anything, it's one thing we do continuously, it seems like, is we do elections, right? But this election on February 21st, this spring primary election, Everyone in the state, Jim, will have at least one thing on one race on their ballot, and that is the primary for the state Supreme Court. There are 4 candidates running. Judicial observers tell us there are 2 that lean conservative, 2 that lean liberal, and that the balance of the court is at stake. And therefore, this is now to make sure everybody understands. When they go to the polls or when they take their absentee ballots or whatever, they get to vote for 1. They don't vote for 2.
Right.
But the top 2 vote getters will go on to the general election on April 4th. And I want to make sure we make that very clear, because I've had people say, oh, so we vote for 2 people. No. You vote for 1.
Or you'll spoil
your ballot.
Yeah. So here are the names that will be on the ballot. Jennifer Doro, we have Janet Protasewicz, we have Daniel Kelly, and then also we have Everett Mitchell. Those are the 4. The first 2 names of Doro and Daniel Kelly, observers say those are the conservatives. The other 2, Protasewicz and also Mitchell, observers say those would be coming from the liberal left.
Well, that's right. And so right now, what do we have in our court? We have so to make sure everybody understands, we have a 7-member high court. It's a 10-year term of office, a longest term of office in anywhere in our state, right? So right now, the split is 4-3 conservative. Not all the time, but it leans that way. And I think that's probably the best word to say. It leans conservative. So this is an open seat, meaning there's no incumbent justice running. Pat Rogan-Sack has decided 20 years on the high court is enough, so she's not running again for another 10-year term. So the seat is open. That's how we got those 4 candidates in there. If a liberal wins, suddenly the tilt of the balance of the court goes from 4-3 conservative to 4-3 liberal. And that is a major shift in what happens in the decision-making of that court.
It really is. And Julaine, I want to just mention here as well the issue that there has been a complaint that's been filed with the Judicial Commission. It's against Judge Janet Protasewicz. And just reading from the complaint that has been filed, it says, this is from the complaint itself, Judge Protasewicz has announced how she will rule on issues that will likely come before the Supreme Court, such as abortion and the constitutionality of Wisconsin's legislative maps. Such pronouncements are prohibited under the ethics code governing Wisconsin judges. We understand it was just looking at the one that issued this, was that coming from the Republican Party?
They were a part of at least one of them. I understand there's now 4 complaints.
A 4th, wow.
4 of them
Wow.
leveled against her. I don't know. Did you see the forum that they did with the WIS Politics and the State Bar and Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty early January? Well, if you didn't, it is a sight to behold, because here is Protasewicz talking about her values, and she leads with things like, well, I can't tell you how I would vote, but I can talk about my values. So Daniel Kelly calls her on it. He doesn't mention her name, but later he says, when you talk about values, it's pretty much saying, this is how I would vote. That's exactly what she's done. But so has Everett Mitchell. Everett Mitchell, right after Roe versus Wade was undone by the Dobbs decision, that day he came out and he said, I will fight forever for the right to women to make their choice. They have completely obliterated whatever modicum of ethics regarding this. So I'm glad to see that there are these complaints filed against them. Now, I'm going to tell you and I don't mean to cause people to despair, I don't think they're going to go anywhere. I think this is going to run its course. She's spending a boatload of money already running ads right now going into the primary. So I think the complaints might put a hitch in that a little bit and make people think a little bit about whether or not that's something, because she makes no bones about it. She thought the redistricting maps were rigged. She talks about the women's rights, it's a right to make the decision on abortion. She's talked about all of it. So.
We also know this 10-year term is going to be a very critical term, because there are going to be many issues, such as our state abortion law. The ban that we have as a state, a law that was passed in 1849 that forbids abortion except in cases of saving the life of a mother. And we know that that is working its way through the judicial process, right, or through the court process. And this is going to be a matter that comes before the court.
Well, it is, and it's going to be one of a host of issues that comes. If this court ends up being liberal, I'm just going to list a litany of things that will be out there for them, because there are people right now, I'm convinced, who already have lawsuits ready to go. Act 10, school choice, parental rights, the transgender issue, the abortion issue, the redistricting maps. Let's just we could go on and on and on. And certainly that 1849 law is going to be amongst them, as you said. By the way, we should mention that decision, that issue and case has not moved out of the Dane County Circuit Court yet, which would be the lowest level. Then after that's decided, we go to the appellate and then to the state Supreme Court. But I'm kind of wondering if they're holding off to see. I'm thinking that maybe the Dane County Court is holding up that to see if they flip that court in April.
Very interesting. Julaine, there's much we're going to unfold here. This is a list from the State of Wisconsin Election Commission as it pertains to the number of absentee ballots that have been sent out across the state of Wisconsin. I'm just going to flip it over because this is by county here. But as we take a look at it, the total of ballots that have been sent out, 240,897 absentee ballots, 234,000, we understand, that's the second column here. I'm sorry, the 234 has been sent out, but the ballots returned of the 234,000, 63,000 have been returned, just over 63,000, which is just a shadow, just a fraction. About 25% of the absentee ballots have actually been returned.
Well, I don't know that it's unusual at this point, because now, just to refresh everybody's memory, absentee ballots have to be returned by the closing of the polls on Election Day, which is 8 p.m. next Tuesday.
They have to be received by then.
Be received in the clerk's office. You can walk them in, you can mail them in. I want to clarify something to make sure people understand. Absentee voting in and of itself is not illegal, if it's done right. Okay, you can't have ballots that are inappropriate, and everybody who gets one needs to be careful. You can't vote twice, and some of that kind of thing can happen with the way we handle absentee ballots and things. But what happens is, well, to be honest with you, Jim, I think the liberals have just beaten us over the head as conservatives with the absentee ballot. I would almost guarantee you that the majority of those ballots have gone to people that are not of conservative persuasions, okay? Because the liberals have gotten very, very good at saying, oh, if these people get an absentee ballot, they're more likely to vote, rather than be inconvenienced about trying to figure out a time to go down to the local clerk's office, right? And so, caution.
I'm going to bring this into the mix here too, because this came from the Wisconsin State Journal, February 12th. Okay, here's the headline. Some voters in northern Wisconsin Village got absentee ballots that were already filled in. Kirk blames human error. Just to look from the article itself, an unknown number of voters in the village of Cronenwetter have received absentee ballots for the February 21st primary that appeared to have already been partially filled in, while others received ballots that had not been initialed by the clerk's office said. In both cases, according to a post on the Marathon County Village's website, the mistakes were the result of human error and not evidence of fraud, they say. According to the statement on Facebook, which was posted February 2nd and 3rd, a few village residents received test ballots in which the computer-generated ovals for some races were already filled in. Some ballots mailed out on January 30th and 31st, it's unclear if they were the same ones, were also missing initials by the clerk or deputy clerk, which the Post called an oversight. Now, one of these days we're going to get it right as how to do elections. We never seemed to have this problem before, prior to COVID anyways. But Julaine, there are a number of people who get absent, and some people are confined to their homes. Some are watching the program here this evening. They need to check over these ballots to be sure that this ballot is indeed not filled out by someone and that the clerk's initials are there.
That's exactly right. So in Wisconsin, there's two ways to vote early, right? You get a ballot in the mail from the clerk, you've requested it, and the clerk mails it to you. When that comes, it comes with a special envelope that you have to have it, put that ballot in to return it. So checking that ballot and that envelope when it comes to you is incredibly important. Human error. Unless the clerk is brand new and started January 1st, that's dubious. This is suspicious, right? Test ballots. Where's the quality control? Why isn't somebody paying attention? So here's from my perspective, the clerk in Cronenbetter needs to get his or her act cleaned up, get people that are competent in there to reduce the human error. Mm-hmm. And it is incumbent upon us as voters to check those ballots if we have one of them. Mm-hmm. Folks, please look at those ballots. Check to make sure that there's clerk's initials on them. Check to make sure that there's not ovals that have been filled in in various races, mm-hmm. or that there's not something else suspicious about it. Check that envelope. And by the way, Jim, you and I know that one of the ways to get an absentee ballot discarded, not counted, is to not fill out that envelope correctly. You've got to have a witness on there. You have to have the witness's address, have to have the witness's signature on that envelope. And so that's part of the process on the absentee ballot. And just quickly to say the rest of that, the second way to do voting early in Wisconsin is to go to the clerk's office and vote right there on a ballot. By the way, that's considered absentee.
Yeah, and it's also called early voting, which is going on yet through this week.
Right, through Friday. Mm-hmm. You would know because you are a Milwaukee
resident.
Yeah,
oftentimes in Milwaukee they extend that through the weekend here as well. But
right, Milwaukee and Madison, I think, because they have larger staffs and things like that. But mm-hmm. for the most part, across the state, the early in-person voting ends this Friday at the close mm-hmm. of business. So, and by the way, if you are trying to get an absentee ballot mailed back to the clerk's office, you better be putting it in the mail by probably no later than Wednesday.
Yeah, because they have to receive it by Tuesday. Right. You can't have it postmarked by Tuesday and expect it to be counted. They must receive it by Tuesday.
Right. I think there's an exception only in there for military.
Julaine, the other aspect, and this is a press release that came out from NARAL Pro-Choice America, they know what this means, this Supreme Court race. And the headline, the Wisconsin Supreme Court's balance of power carries the fate of the state's abortion access.
Well, it does. And so NARAL Pro-Choice was, Wisconsin, NARAL Pro-Choice America. We got an email today from a group that headquarters out of New York to elderly and has appeals to elderly mm-hmm. people, senior citizens, saying, if you live in Wisconsin, please make sure you vote in this primary. The media, Jim, all over this country is saying this is the big election for 2023 mm-hmm. in the country. You've got gubernatorial elections coming up in November. They're saying this eclipses those.
Julaine, the importance, especially the one issue is abortion for so many of these. But look what's happened to our neighbor states. Michigan, with their governor, Governor Whitmer, they've just put in a pro-abortion up to birth possibilities to take place, legalized it. Minnesota has just done that in their state. Illinois, our neighbor to the south, allows for that to take place. Wisconsin right now is that safe haven for the preborn, and they're trying to chop away at the moral roots of our state here as well.
Well, they are, and we've had 50 years of people believing this was a right. Mm-hmm. And so that's something we have to do with the heart and the head with people, is to help them understand. And intellectually, it's not a right to kill a preborn baby. But secondly, that we have to reach the emotion part of it, that baby is a separate human being. I still, Jim, I marvel at how hard we work to kill our future.
Yeah.
To kill a baby.
Julaine Appling with us here tonight. And friends, I hope you understand the importance of this primary election coming up on Tuesday. There are two of the candidates we were able to catch up with, and that's Judge Jennifer Dorow and Justice Daniel Kelly. We had invited both to be on the TV program. We could not work out a time with Judge Dorow. Her campaign was unable to confirm a date, but Justice Kelly was on this program here. But we did catch up with both of them on a radio interview, which have already aired on WVCY. But as a public service, WVCY Radio is going to rebroadcast those two interviews. This coming Thursday on 107.7 WVCY Radio, we will have at 12 noon, when people are taking lunch breaks and have access to the radio, we'll be airing the interview with Judge Jennifer Dorow. Then on Friday at 12 noon, we'll be airing the interview that we had with Justice Daniel Kelly. So those will be airing this Thursday and Friday, 12 noon, right here on WVCY Radio 107.7 on the radio dial. Julaine, there's a good segment of our audience as well that is going to have something beyond this on their ballot, particularly a Senate seat, and this is Senate District number 8. This would be in the Germantown, Menominee Falls area and some other areas there too. But I see there are 3 Republicans running, 1 Democrat, so there's a primary for the 3 Republicans, which are Dan Knodel, also Van Mobley, and Janelle Brandtjen. Your comments on this race?
Well, this vacancy in this 8th Senate District came about because longtime serving Republican Senator Alberta Darling resigned in December. So with creating this vacancy, Janelle Brandtjen and Dan Knodel are currently members of our state assembly, and Van Mobley is currently the mayor of Thiensville. So you have people, all 3 of those have some experience in the area of lawmaking, if you will, of legislative work. So, but it's a 3-way primary. The top vote getter will go on after the primary in February to face a very aggressive Democrat who is already running ads. I've seen ads particularly against Janelle Brandtjen, who has an incredible pro-life, pro-family, pro-liberty track record in our state legislature. And the gal is just going right after her. So it will be it'll be an important race. And by the way, up until the time that Alberta Darling stepped down in December, for that brief time after the election to December 1st, the Senate had a veto-proof majority. So right now with that vacancy, it's not veto-proof. Assuming that a Republican comes out of this quite red district, then the majority in the Senate, that Republican majority, will be veto-proof. Now, it doesn't do them any good because the Assembly lacks, I think, 4 votes or something like that of being a veto-proof Assembly.
So polls are open Tuesday, 7 a.m. till 8 p.m., and people can certainly get the information, be there to vote. They can vote in person now, absentee ballots, and then also in person. But there may be some unique things on people's ballots, too, that will be on the primary. More will be coming in April. But, friends, just a reminder that there is a website that you can go to in the state to find out what is on your ballot. You can go to the website, myvote.wi.gov. Very simple to use, myvote.wi.gov. There's a little blue circle, what's on my ballot? You can also learn there how to register and everything else there. But what's on my ballot, you click on that, then you'll be putting in your address, not your name, but just your address, your voting address, and then you click the little button and you'll be able to see what is on your ballot. Julaine, people can still register for this important primary election as well. Well,
they can. And in fact, I think it's up through, it's coming soon, but it's in the next few days where you can actually register online, or you can register by mail. After that, you got to go to the clerk's office. And in Wisconsin, you can register the day of the election, right? So you just have to make sure that you take some kind of proof of your residency, like a utility bill or a check stub or a driver's license, something like that. And we should also remind people, Jim, even though it's been a couple years, maybe 3 or 4 years now, you still need to show photo ID to vote. You don't have to show photo ID to register, but you do need to show state-issued ID card or a driver's license or a student ID card in order to vote. And you will be turned away if you don't have that, or you better be turned away if you don't have that. But people need to remember that.
We've got about a dozen issues to cover in a few minutes here, so we'll do what we can. Some things we want to mention as well. This Wednesday, Governor Evers will be delivering a budget address.
Well, he will. And this will be his third budget address. He will be establishing his priorities. That's what a budget is. A budget is a glimpse of someone's priorities. That'll be the executive, what we call the executive budget. The governor's going to tell us about what his priorities are when he gives that address coming up here in the next couple days. I anticipate he's already teased out things, right? He's teased out tax cuts. He's teased out a number of different things. But what happens after it is really every bit as significant, because now once he does that, the legislature will then do its part. And if it happens the way it has happened in the last 2 cycles, what the governor actually gets, Jim, looks very much
polar
not
opposites,
like
right?
polar opposites from what he gave them. let's remember that if the projections are right, we're dealing with something over a $7 billion surplus. That's not money that has come from China. That's not money that has come because the government made something. It's coming from us as taxpayers. That's money that could be sitting in 401ks or stock market or being used to put kids through school or, you know, to keep the family farm going, putting food on the table, putting a house, you know, roof over people's heads. I think there needs to be a strong ethical, moral component to how we handle that surplus, and it should show up in the budget. So we'll see. The governor's plan, I anticipate, will be we're going to use it to, he's got a tax cut plan, but I think you're going to see funding for special groups.
Yeah. And will not allow tax cuts for all tax brackets.
He nixed the flat. It's hardly even out of the gate, right? And the governor said, if it comes in with a flat tax, I'm going to veto it.
Yeah.
And in our state, that governor's veto pin, very powerful.
Julaine, also school choice has a registration window that's going on right now. It's to what, April 20th?
April 20th for most of them. Look, this is, when we look around at what's going on in our public schools, lots of parents are saying, wow, what are my options here? Well, we actually have a wealth of school choice options, educational freedom we have here in Wisconsin. And if parents are interested in like the parental choice programs, which we call the voucher programs, that window to apply, assuming they meet the income eligibility, is from now through April 20th. But there's open enrollment where you can come from one public school district to another public school district. There's virtual charter. There's homeschooling, which you can do at any point, right? You can go to a traditional private school without the voucher program. But we just encourage people to find out about that. Look at School Choice Wisconsin's website. Look at the state DPI under their choice programs to get the applications and get more details. Now is the time to see if you qualify for some of this. To get if the school your child's in isn't working for him or her, think about your options. We have the best homeschool law in the country, Jim. It was signed in 1983 and is basically the same law. Can't say that about a lot of things, but it is basically the same homeschool law that we've had since 1983, untouched. And it's not onerous, it's not laborious. There are lots of options for parents to look at.
Also, the parental choice program, that goes until the 28th of April. So when we're back next month, we'll talk about this again, I'm sure, on the docket. I mentioned at the start of the program, 100 pieces of legislation have been introduced so far. We're going to hit just a few items here. First of all, here's a pair of bills, Assembly Bill 3, and it has its pair in the Senate is Senate Bill number 4. And I'm going to have to give the backstory to these pieces of legislation, but this involves counseling and some would call it conversion therapy issues. So tell us about these bills.
This actually happened in 2019 because the state legislature was not going to pass a ban on, quote, conversion therapy, right? And so the people that were in the licensing area for marriage and family therapists, counselors, and all of that said, okay, well, let's just create a rule. So they tried to create a rule that called it unprofessional conduct if you did anything other than affirm, encourage, do all that kind of, if you said anything that would be deemed trying to, quote, change someone's mind, that would make you guilty of unprofessional conduct, up to the point of losing your license, which would mean for many of these people losing their livelihood. We found a way through through the rules committees there in the state legislature to temporarily stop it. Well, because the legislature didn't take action on a bill last session, it actually was implemented December 1st of last year. So when that happened, that joint committee got together in early January and they said, look, this is an overreach of the examining board that issues these licenses. They're way out of bounds. And that committee voted to suspend this rule coming out of a department. But I want people to understand this is how this is a workaround. It's not illegal. It's not illegal. They just used it. These people are crafty. They're looking always at ways to do this. So what happened is Assembly Bill 3, Senate Bill 4 got introduced to say, okay, we're going to use our legislative authority rather than you try to come at it in an unconstitutional way by breaching, it's not your authority, And we're going to stop you from putting in that kind of language. So that's what this is about. And you notice that it was put out by the Joint Committee for Review of Administrative Rules. That's the committee that's been involved with it.
Okay.
So
And
we'll see.
so that department may try and do these rules again, which would mean, unless this passes, they'd have to stop it through the same means again.
But let's point out the giant and the elephant in this room. This could pass. I could see this passing in both the Assembly and the Senate. This is going to go to the governor. He's not going to sign this into law.
Yeah.
He's going to veto it.
Yeah.
That's what happens in a split government.
Elections have consequences.
Elections have consequences.
Let's hit another couple bills. This is Assembly Bill number 15, and its companion is Senate Bill number 10. This is dealing with issues pertaining to minors, harmful materials to minors, libraries, schools.
Well, this is a big deal right now. Again, this, COVID's gotten blamed for all kinds of things, and rightly so. But one of the things it did is it pulled back the curtain, the wizard's curtain on education, right? Because parents were peering over the kids' shoulders looking at what they were looking at on their computers when they were doing homebound education. And suddenly, parents said, wow, that book's available in your school library? Or where'd you get that book? Well, I got it down at the youth section or the children's section in our public library. And that's the intent of this bill, is to try to rein in this offensive, and the technical term, the legal term is harmful to children. That is actually defined in the law. Materials that end up in children's collections in a public library, or readily available as a print copy in a school library, or through these digital libraries. So this bill actually is reflective of what parents have discovered through their involvement with school districts, because parents are more and more aware of what's going on, and that's why they did this.
And again, with Tony Evers from his days as Secretary of Education in the state, doesn't appear he would be favorable for something like this.
Well, he's supposed to be the governor who's all about the kids, right? I mean, that's what we heard all the time. But he has a different idea of what is harmful to children. We believe that some of these books that talk about subject matter that is inappropriate for kindergartens or first graders or whatever should not be in a school, should not be in a public library in the children's section. And the governor is going to say, no, by the way, Jim, talking about that, I had somebody email me today and say, hey, is there an alternative to the American Library Association for standards related to book selection for schools? There's not. So what I think has to happen is local school boards need to start putting out their own standards. There's nothing that prohibits that.
Julaine, we have seen in libraries across the country that are concerned, and they've actually pulled out of the American Library Association. That's something libraries can do.
They can do it. There's nothing that says because you have a school library, you have to be bound by that. Public libraries aren't bound by the ALA. I don't think there's any organization, trade organization, if you will, that is any more liberal than the ALA, and it's been like that for years. They're right up there with the NEA.
Let's hit another couple bills. Here is Assembly Bill 21, Senate Bill number 26, its companion, and this is taking those who are ineligible and removing them from the voter rolls. That's a novel idea.
A novel idea, exactly. Well, this is one of the things that the Wisconsin Elections Commission has struggled with, right? Identifying and removing people who no longer are eligible to vote in Wisconsin. They're deceased, they've moved, they're felons, whatever the reason is that disqualifies them. That's all this bill does. It says, look, you have to get them out of the voter rolls so that they are not inadvertently available to be, I'm going to use the word captured, for illegal purposes or for any other, or some nefarious purpose. That's really what they're trying to do. Now, the governor vetoed about a dozen, it seemed to me it was about a dozen of election reform bills last session. He doesn't believe there's any problem with the system. He doesn't believe that the voter rolls need to be purged, that the voter rolls need to be, with this eligible versus ineligible segregated.
People who've moved out of state.
No. And I mean, he has a track record of that. He's been very, very candid about it. So I think this will pass. I don't see any reason why this, looking at the support for it, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't pass. But I see every reason for why the governor will veto it, because he's not interested in anything that messes with what he believes is well-run elections at this point.
Let's also hit Assembly Joint Resolution 8, Senate Joint Resolution 7. So I'll have you explain what this joint resolution is, and this is calling for an advisory referendum dealing with critical race theory.
Well, that's essentially what it is. Now, so this is the state legislature working around the veto of a governor. So the governor vetoed a bill that would have prohibited the teaching of CRT, for all practical purposes, in our public schools last year. So this is an effort to say, all right, let's let the people vote on this. It won't change what we're doing. It won't force the governor to do anything. It won't force the legislature to do anything. But let's get something out there that the people of Wisconsin can vote on. Now, this does not have to go through 2 consecutive legislative sessions because it's not amending our Constitution. This is just an advisory referendum. And if you notice, it says that it would at the next spring or general election occurring not sooner than 45 days after adoption. So it won't be on. I see no way this is on this spring, but I could see it on next spring. So this is an attempt to keep these issues out there where the people remember, oh, yeah, that we need to talk about that, and why haven't we done anything? And so that's an issue. And if they move this forward, then for a year from now, I would anticipate we would have an opportunity to say, yeah, I think that's right, or I don't think that's right.
Cover one last piece of legislation tonight. This is a Senate Joint Resolution number 10, and this is something that really strikes at our 1849 law.
Right, and this is another advisory referendum. This is an attempt to actually remove the 1849 law, to say it no longer should be in there. It's to revoke it, and that's this is not going to be on. And you notice on this one, this is scheduled for April of 2024. So it would not. It will. I want to make sure the viewers know this is not something you are going to see in April of 2023.
Right.
But this is an attempt to make sure that they get a poll of the state. Now, under the current configuration, this bill has been introduced by all Democrats. It's not going anywhere.
Well, due to sake of time, we got more issues, but friends, let's open some phone lines. Our telephone number for inFocus tonight. Maybe you got a question about some of the things we've talked about. Maybe a question pertaining to the primary election. Pick up your phone, give us a call, 414-935-3030. That's 414-935-3030. You can reach us toll free at 800-733-8830. That's 1-800-733-8830. And if you'd like to text in your question or comment, put your first name, the city you're texting from, and you can send it to this text number, 414-439-3585. That's 414-439-3585. Julaine, surprisingly, but we still have those with mentality, it's just a primary election. Doesn't really count for anything. I'm not deciding who's going into office. Speak to that individual.
Well, first of all, because this is a low voter turnout, every vote counts even more than it normally does. It's kind of, if we got to 20%, which I doubt that we will, okay? But basically what that means is your vote counts at least for 5 other people, right? I mean, essentially. So this is determining who's going to be elected. We're determining who is going to be on the general election ballot in April. This is where we have a direct say in developing that ballot. So it is incredibly important. You will never hear me, Jim, say any election is not important. This is an important election. We all have an opportunity to vote on that state Supreme Court race, and there may be other local offices where people in different parts of our state, maybe there's a mayoral primary or a city council or school board primary, something like that. So again, we urge them to go myvote.wi.gov.
Yeah, check that out, and you can see what's on your ballot. No surprises when it comes to Tuesday. But for many of you, the only thing on your ballot is going to be the Supreme Court race. That is enough motivation and reason to be out there. Let's go to the phone lines, and the lines are open. We can take your calls here tonight, 414-935-3030, 800-733-8830, or you may text your message tonight to 414-439-3585. We've got Sharon calling from Sheboygan, and Sharon, you're on the air.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Okay. Hi. Thank you. Julaine, thank you so much for working so hard and giving us all this great information that we receive. I have a comment and a question. My comment is I have lived in Sheboygan for 20 years. I'm originally from the Fort Wayne, Indiana area. We had one day of voting, and that was it. And the people that couldn't get to the polls had volunteers that went to their place and took their votes. Okay, and what happened with that? And another thing is that I hear these advertisements about the lady running on the Republican Party for our Congress, the judge.
But yeah, okay. Just a point of clarification, Sharon. There are no Republicans, Democrats that are on the ballot for this. It's a nonpartisan election for Supreme Court, though there are those within the parties that are supporting different candidates.
Okay. Well, the one that's running alongside of Dan Kelly, I can't think of her name, but I'm wondering why all of these fake advertisements about her on television is very disturbing.
You're referring to attack ads?
To who?
Attack, those ads that are attacking Jennifer Doro?
Yes, yes. It's very upsetting to me because how are we to know whether they're true or not? And that's just my question, you know. I think both candidates are going to be good.
Well, Sharon, thank you for the call. First of all, generally speaking, you're right. Over the years, we had one day of voting, and most people went to the polls on Election Day. There were a few people who took advantage because they were shut-ins of an absentee ballot, or they were going to be out of state, legitimate uses of an absentee ballot. Those days are over. They just are over. And we as conservatives are going to have to figure this out because we're not going to go back to everybody votes on Election Day, and you better have a really valid reason, in our opinion, to get an absentee ballot. That horse has left the barn. So, like it or not. Secondly, on these ads, I've seen a couple of them, but let me draw a distinction for something between at least Dan Kelly and Jennifer Doro. Because I get asked this all the time, Jim. What's the difference? Well, one difference is Daniel Kelly has 4 years of experience on the Supreme Court, and we have a record of what he's done. What people are looking at Jennifer Doro and saying is, where's your record? Because she's not served at the appellate level or at the Supreme Court level. So there is no record. What you have from her is her word. So, and then there's other things that have come out. And I don't think Daniel Kelly's going to get by unscathed on some of this. I understand that Mark Belling came out over the weekend with some scathing remarks about Dan Kelly. It is the nature of politics that people will do these kinds of ads, and we just have to try to find sources and information that we believe are reliable. I wouldn't listen to the ads on TV, to be perfectly honest. There is one educational guide that I can recommend, I believe, Jim. It's iVoterGuide.com, and on the homepage there, choose the state of Wisconsin on the map, and you will find just educational information about all four candidates, and that is objective information that anybody can go out and find, put together for voters to make good decisions from.
Thank you so much for your comments here tonight.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you.
For us. Thank you.
Let's go next to Jane in West Dallas. Hi, Jane. You're on the air.
Yes. My question is, I'm not up to date on who to vote for, and normally I vote Republican because the Republicans usually have the biblical viewpoints. Do most of them have it, and who should we vote for?
Well, we can't tell you who to vote for, Jane, but I can tell you this. We're extremely glad that you vote consistently and that you are concerned about how the candidates view issues, what their worldview is, and how they would look at the issues that would be important to you and to me. Again, I think that what we have here is judicial observers tell us to lean liberal. That's Everett Mitchell and Janet Protasiewicz.
Wait, okay, who are they now?
Janet Protasiewicz and Everett Mitchell.
They would be the ones that
lean liberal.
Liberal.
And that's not Jim and me saying that. That's what quote experts, liberal.
Any newspaper account.
Any
you're seeing it,
newspaper, right. By the way, the whole country's watching this
Say the
race.
names again, Janet, who?
Well, it's virtually, it's got a whole lot of consonants in it. It's Protasiewicz, but and she's the first one on the ballot, by the way. And then the other one is Everett Mitchell. The two that lean conservative are Daniel Kelly and Jennifer Doro. And as I just said in my previous answer, there are some differences between those two candidates. One has a proven track record. The other one, we have her word, which isn't wrong, which isn't bad, but we as voters have to make those decisions.
Then I have one other question. Do they have on the ballot whether they are Republican or Democrat?
No, this is a nonpartisan election, so that's why you will not see an RRD behind their name.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your answers, and may God bless us, and we get not who we deserve, but who God wants to be in control.
Jane, thank you for your call here tonight. Appreciate it. Our phone number 414-935-3000, 800-733-8830. The exception for the spring election, for those who are voting on a Senate district, that is Republican versus Democrat, but in this case, like Menominee Falls area, Germantown, it's just a Republican primary because there's only one Democrat that's running, 3 Republicans. They got to narrow the Republicans down to 1. We also have a text message here that just came in. Let me grab this. It says, this is Ron from Salem. Who is a better fit for Supreme Court, conservatively? Kelly or Doro is the question. And Julaine, you referred to this iVoterGuide.com, and I've got a copy of it with me here. And this is through their analysis. Sometimes they have questionnaires that are filled out, etc. Here's how they view the breakdown. So for Jennifer Doro, and if we can show this on screen here, Jennifer Doro, you'll see a little box over here, a little graph, and it says originalist. So they put her down as being an originalist. We're going to flip the page here. We go now to Daniel Kelly. And the difference here, they call him a proven originalist. And that's what you're talking about, is that there's a track record to see where he has voted on issues. And then Everett Mitchell is declared activist by the organization. And then Janet Protasiewicz also is activist. And then there are things you can click on to learn more information about who's endorsing them, where their contributions coming from or how much, if they filled out a questionnaire, those kind of things. That's available on the website. And those in Senate District number 8, they'll find the same kind of information there as well.
And we point out that doesn't tell you how to vote. It just gives you information to help you make an informed decision.
Right.
So we encourage people to get that information. I know you talk about knowledgeably, and you talk about voting prayerfully, and we add knowledgeably and responsibly do that prayerfully. So this is designed to do that.
Be informed and cast a prayerful vote.
Absolutely.
And that's important for every single election. We've got Ann calling from West Dallas. Hi, Ann, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I wanted to clarify the critical race theory. What is the Senate Joint Resolution number?
What is it, the bill numbers?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get that here for you. Oh, I'm sorry, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, good. The critical race theory is dealing with, that's AJR 8 and SJR 7.
Okay, and then if we call our legislators, we want them to say yes on all these bills or no?
Well, it depends on where, we can't lay that out specifically for you. If you think that it is wrong to teach CRT in our schools, you would want your legislators to support this advisory referendum. If you think CRT is good and it's appropriate for that to be taught in schools, then you would want your elected officials to vote no.
Okay, and to clarify the conversion therapy bill, is that prohibiting conversion therapy or allowing counselors to counsel?
That bill would stop the department that licenses marriage and family therapists, counselors, and there's one other term that fits in there, from restricting and this is why this was deemed unconstitutional. It restricted the freedom of speech and freedom of religion of those counselors from saying, this is not a good path for you. So what this bill would do is it would stop the department from saying, you have to affirm, encourage, help, normalize people that are struggling with gender identity issues or struggling with same-sex attraction. It can't be deemed unprofessional conduct.
Right. So if one is in favor of allowing counselors to give counsel for those with same-sex attractions, then they would be in favor of this legislation.
Right. Counsel that actually helps.
Right.
And doesn't hurt them, and offers them hope.
One more thing, is it helpful to have the poll on the abortion law, or is that harmful?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The advisory referendum on the 1849 law? Is that what you're asking? Well, personally,
is that a good thing for them to give that a poll, or is that not likely to be a good
it would turn out to be a poll of sorts if it got onto the ballot. It's not going to get on a ballot. But here's my take on this kind of thing, Jim. You don't do polls on human life,
right?
The value of human life.
Yeah.
Right is right and wrong is wrong. And if the poll came back that 90% of the people in this state said that 1849 law ought to be done away with, you and I would sit here and say, no, the opinion of the people in this case is wrong.
And thank you for the call. We're out of time. Julaine Appling with us tonight from Wisconsin Family Council. Julaine, you have an event coming up this Thursday in Kenosha, Wisconsin called Religious Freedom Matters.
It does. We talked about it at the top of the show. Religious freedom is in the crosshairs of basically every cultural issue that we deal with today. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what we as individuals can do, looking at a host of issues. We're going to talk about some of these legislative things in the Supreme Court election. We still have some room there for the Kenosha event, and they can register online at wifamilycouncil.org, or they can call us at presumably the number you have there, 888-378-7395. And we'd love to see people there. Our first community event of the year.
Wonderful. And again, wifamilycouncil.org. You can go to the website and get signed up, or call the toll-free number 1-888-378-7395. These are so important issues, Julaine. And again, this coming Tuesday, a very critical election.
Well, as we close the program out, an appeal from you and me to the people who are viewing: vote and take others with you. Encourage the people that you have influence with to go vote, to cast a prayerful, knowledgeable, informed ballot. Honor God with your vote. Be engaged in the process. This is an opportunity for us as citizens to have a direct input on who becomes the next justice in the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Julaine, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jim.
Julaine Appling from Wisconsin Family Council, dealing with critical legislative update here tonight and in Focus. God bless you. Thanks for joining us.